que ya viene la revolución, para que se asustan será pa' mejor. Es el pueblo entero el que ya está gritando, ¡viva la revolución!
Iranian nuclear weapons development.
They have turned the island into a communist hellhole.
The experiment in Venezuela has failed completely.
La bestialidad imperialista. Bestialidad que no tiene una frontera determinada ni pertenece a un país determinado. Bestias fueron las hordas hitleristas, como bestias son los norteamericanos hoy, como bestias son los paracaidistas belgas, como bestias fueron los imperialistas franceses en Argelia. Porque es la naturaleza del imperialismo la que bestializa a los hombres, la que la convierte en fieras sedientas de sangre que están dispuestas a degollar, a asesinar, a destruir hasta la última imagen de un revolucionario, de un partidario de un régimen que haya caído bajo su bota o que luche por su libertad. Y la estatua que recuerda a Lumumba, hoy destruida pero mañana reconstruida, nos recuerda también en la historia trágica de ese mártir de la revolución del mundo, que no se puede confiar en el imperialismo, pero ni tantito así, nada.
defend the headquarters of the revolution, defend the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, People's Korea, Socialist Korea, Liberated Korea, Upright Korea, Dignified Korea. What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 92, Unmasking Imperialism, Exposing Imperialist Propaganda in Mainstream Media. Today, in defense of the DPRK, I put North Korea in the title because most people unfortunately know it as North Korea, but DPRK is the official name in defense of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. During today's episode, we are going to debunk corporate news reports and lies, propaganda, slanders about the socialist country, our sisters and brothers, the headquarters of socialism, one of the few countries in the world that has not compromised with Western imperialism, that has not given the imperialists an inch to conquer their country. We're going to discuss the history of the Korean Revolution and its long-standing resistance to imperialism, and also international solidarity with all oppressed peoples around the world, including Palestine, including the Black liberation struggle, including the Latin American liberation movements and African liberation movements. We're going to talk about the importance of international solidarity with the DPRK amid ongoing slanders and attacks. The DPRK is constantly, every single day, is attacked in the media. And we, as the left, as the anti-imperialists in the belly of the beast, we have to do a better job of defending and standing up for our sisters and brothers in the DPRK, because the attacks are getting worse by the day. And joining me today is an amazing comrade, somebody who I have a lot of respect for, a comrade who does a lot. We've all heard the term Renaissance man, a Renaissance person. I consider this comrade to be a Renaissance comrade. Comrade Suh Hee Jun, a Korean stem cell scientist, hip-hop MC, poet, and martial artist. All those things, amazing different attributes of this comrade that you will see in different people, but together is just very dynamic. So somebody who has a lot of skills and talents. Comrade Suh's political line centers on a dialectical materialist and anti-colonial analysis on how to build revolution in our lifetime. And please check out her poetry. Her books are amazing. If you look online, check out some of her books, support her work. Really amazing work. How's it going, Comrade Suh?
Thanks, comrade. It's so good to see you. I have so much respect for you as well. Can't wait to get over there for the wedding next year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Gorgeous song you had on the intro, and I've actually never heard that Chase speech. I guess he was talking about Patrice Lumumba. That's a real gem.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of his most famous speeches at the UN, talking about basically how useless the UN is and talking about the need for never trusting imperialism. That famous line where he says, "Never trust imperialism, not even a little bit." And that line always sticks to me because a lot of so-called leftists even fall for some of the lies about the DPRK. We're seeing some of the propaganda ramp up against Iran right now, the color revolution style, quote, uprisings, and people always fall for it. Syria, any country that's not trendy. And I feel like this may be kind of controversial to say, but whatever, I'll say anyway. Is like, and I'm sure you feel this way too, comrade. But like within a lot of the left circles of the imperial core of the U.S., there are certain causes that are trendy, and I support. It's not to say I don't support them, but there are certain causes that are easier to support than others. And I feel like one of the causes that's not trendy to defend is the DPRK, to defend Syria, Zimbabwe, Iran, and countries that don't necessarily have a lot of the same international solidarity as other movements. And this is why it's important to have these kind of conversations, especially with somebody who is Korean and who is a revolutionary and anti-imperialist, because this is something that is almost never mentioned. And as I mentioned to you before as well, I've met Koreans who consider themselves communists or Marxists, but a lot of times they kind of come from a social point of view. They attack the DPRK. They're like, that's not real socialism. So having this discussion is really important. You're not going to really find it anywhere. But just to kind of kick off, before getting into some of the latest news about the DPRK and the recent aggression against them, why don't you tell people a little bit about your background and how you came to discover your political identity as a revolutionary, as a communist, but also as a Korean woman and living in the imperial core.
Right. Thank you so much. It's so much. I mean, so much. And just from a pure like dialectical materialist analysis, I can really see how I did turn out with the political line I have. So for one, I was adopted. And so looking at that adoption from Korea, I saw a quote recently from an article I haven't gotten to read yet that said, if the division of Korea is the wound, then transnational adoption is the blood that flows freely from it. So coming to understand that adoption is a microcosm of so many issues of colonialism and imperialism. But rewinding before even that, I mean, that came way later. So the beginning of my political journey was when I was fighting some felony cases for the toppling of a Confederate statue. And my first foray into politics in general was studying the Black radical tradition. And I actually came to, I was lucky in that I came to my understanding of the DPRK through the Black radical tradition. So like seeing Marcus Garvey's, not Marcus Garvey, sorry, seeing
I think you.
Okay, sorry.
I think you froze for a second. Now you're good. Now you came back. You're good.
As you know, as he became later in his life, also visited the DPRK when he was. The history of the DPRK, and in doing that, I read some Kim Il-sung works and just sort of branched off from there. Yeah, and so that's then awesome. Seeing that their approach to international solidarity, especially, you know, being the only country in the world to not recognize Israel at all, not condemn Israel, but not recognize it at all. And, you know, the relationship they built with the Panthers, the relationship they built with Cuba, the relationship they built with China. I mean, one of the strongest solidarities in the history of the world. And, you know, that really forged my understanding of anti-colonialism, not only as a lens through which we analyze things and build revolution, but also as something that requires transnational solidarity. Yeah.
Most definitely. And I feel that within the socialist movement, the DPRK has had such a principled position during the 1961 Sino-Soviet split. The DPRK always opted for unity in the socialist camp, saying that China and the Soviet Union should maintain friendship and camaraderie in the face of imperialism, because imperialism is the main enemy. And I think that the DPRK really has an advanced socialist perspective, also because of the size. People have to remember just how small the DPRK is, especially Korea in itself. The Korean Peninsula in itself is small compared to the rest of Asia, like China or even Japan. And the DPRK is even smaller. And this makes it very vulnerable to attacks from U.S. imperialism, but at the same time, it makes it very cognizant of the need for international unity. And we see this as well with Cuba and with Nicaragua and other countries that are small but have a very, very powerful revolution and a mass mobilization of the people. And I think even Kim Il-sung, as a communist, as a revolutionary, he's somebody who has inspired me a lot. Kim Il-sung was one of the people who actually helped me stop drinking. I used to drink I've been sober for 4 years now. And around that time, I started reading Kim Il-sung and his writings about maintaining yourself and being healthy and clean and exercising and serving the people. And I think that his writings are very underrated when it comes to self-improvement and what it means to be a full communist in terms of unleashing your human potential in every aspect. It's sort of like what you're doing. Like, you're a freaking stem cell scientist. Like, you're a hip hop MC, a poet, martial artist. So you're tapping into these different elements of society, of self-actualization and developing your skills. And this is something that Kim Il-sung and the Workers' Party of Korea and the Juche ideology promotes for all Korean people. And I think nowadays we kind of take that for granted, especially with a lot of in liberal circles, what we will call self-care and stuff. But when we talk about the Korean people who have been subjugated to decades of imperialist war, colonization, half the country was bombed in the 50s by the U.S. imperialists. Before that, the Japanese. That's a very revolutionary act for the Korean people to say, no, we don't want to be slaves to your economic system. We're going to stand up and do our own thing. And I think it's very beautiful.
First of all, congratulations on 4 years of sobriety. That's really incredible. I know that took
this is kombucha, by the way.
I believe you.
Yeah, imagine I'm just like fucking drinking a beer and shit. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been sober
so
4
sober.
years.
No, but it's interesting you said that about. I don't think people understand how truly principled it was to have that line from the DPRK on the Sino-Soviet split, because so much of the DPRK's funding in the Reconstruction era came from Russia and China. So to have that principled stance, and that goes back to Juche as self-reliance anyway. So to have that principled stance in a way that could have alienated them, and obviously there's a lot of history behind that, for their own Reconstruction period, like it was a really principled thing to do, which is insane. And also, like, I love that you love the operas from the Kims and everything. A lot of people don't realize how much of the party really focused on arts. I mean, it's one of the only, the Juche, the Korean Workers' Party symbol, is one of the only ones I've ever seen. I mean, it has the classical agricultural sickle and the the classical industrial hammer to represent the workers coming together. It's the only one I've ever seen. It also has the plume. It has the pen in the very middle to represent the arts and what they can do for the revolution. And that's threaded throughout all of the writings from the Kims and threaded throughout the Juche ideology. And so I definitely, yes, that's the pin in the middle. For a long time I thought it was a candle, but it's a pin.
It's such a beautiful logo. Honestly, the DPRK's imagery and the symbolism is very inspiring, and I feel like it also, one of the beautiful things that Kim Il-sung writes about in his collected works and a lot of his writings is bridging the gap, overcoming the contradiction between mental work and physical work, overcoming the contradiction between labor in the countryside and labor in the cities, and unifying all Korean peoples around their hand. And even the star, the DPRK flag and the red star, it's very symbolic, very beautiful, because it represents the 5 fingers of the hand that produces the wealth of society.
I did not know
the workers' power. Yeah, the 5 pointed star represents the 5 inhabited continents, and the 5 international proletarianism, it represents the 5 fingers of the hand that united produce something beautiful. And it makes reference to, and even Kim Il-sung talks about this as well, when he references Karl Marx and the German ideology, where he talks about that under capitalism, humans bow down to the products of their creation. Like, even though our hands created these phones and these laptops and all these things, in a way under capitalism, we're subservient and enslaved to them. But under socialism, we reclaim the power of our labor. Labor is the most powerful motivating force in history and in society. Right. And this is why I love the DPRK symbology that incorporates a lot of that. It's just, it's really beautiful. By the way, shout out to everybody who's watching and listening. Shout out to Comrade Chris, to Comrade B-Level, to Comrade Avery. Please like and share this. And also, please make sure to check out Comrade Suh's books online. Really amazing work. I just want to share a clip. This is some of the recent news about the DPRK. They've been getting shitted on in mainstream media because they have recently made a policy or reaffirmed their self-defense and their sovereignty with nuclear defense. And a lot of people freak out the second you say nuclear, even though we know that the US is the biggest nuclear power in the world. Israel and all these other imperialist countries have some even way more access to nuclear weapons, but it's not a big deal when Israel or the US has these weapons. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this and we'll get some of your reaction.
After years of stalled denuclearization talks, North Korea reaffirmed its status as a nuclear state on Friday. State media reported that Pyongyang passed a new law enshrining the right to use preemptive nuclear strikes to protect itself. An original 2013 law first outlined North Korea's status as a nuclear state. It stipulated that the country could retaliate with nuclear weapons to repel an invasion or an attack from a hostile, nuclear-capable country. Now, the new law passed on Friday goes beyond that. If Pyongyang detects what they call an imminent attack by weapons of mass destruction against them, they've granted themselves the right to strike first. It's an apparent reference to a similar strategy that South Korea unveiled in July, aimed at North Korea. The North's leader Kim Jong-un said that was a sign of a deteriorating situation. He added that their new law bars any more denuclearization talks from happening and declared the point of no return in a speech.
The utmost significance of legislating nuclear weapons policy is to draw on irreversible lines that there is no bargaining over our nuclear weapons. As long as nuclear weapons remain on Earth, and imperialism remains, and maneuvers of the United States and its followers against our republic are not terminated, our work to strengthen nuclear force will not cease.
Observers say North Korea appears to be preparing to resume nuclear testing for the first time since 2017, and after historic summits with then U.S. President Donald Trump and other world leaders in 2018 failed to persuade Kim to give up those tests. Current U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has offered to return to talks with Kim, while South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol has offered economic aid to Pyongyang if it agreed to denuclearize. Kim on Friday said he would never surrender the weapons, even if the country faced 100 years of sanctions.
So it makes sense. It's common sense. You're defending your country, especially if you've been bombed, attacked. It's any country would do this, right? So the fact that they're highlighting this is crazy. But your thoughts on this, Comrade Suh?
So before I even forget this, because you mentioned Israel, I think it's ridiculous that they're they're demonizing the DPRK for saying, hey, if you say you're going to bomb us, we're going to bomb you, especially when they're doing military games right now. But all that aside, that is so much less aggressive than I recently learned that Israel has something called, I believe it's called the Samson option, but I'm not 100% sure that's what it's called. But it's not that Israel will retaliate if they're directly bombed. It's that if any country threatens the legitimacy of Israel, they say that they'll nuclear waste the entire world. I'm pretty sure is what that states. So that is so much more aggressive.
It's fucking nuts.
And you have to understand the history of the DPRK. So yeah. Samson option.
The name that some military analysts, authors have given to Israel's deterrent strategy of massive retaliation with nuclear weapons as a, quote, last resort against a country whose military has invaded and or destroyed much of Israel. And it makes reference to the Israelite judge Samson, who pushed apart the pillars of a Philistine temple, by the way, Palestinian temple, right? So the hatred of Palestinians goes back fucking thousands of years, bringing down the roof and killing himself and thousands of Palestinians who had captured him, crying out, quote, let me die with the Philistines. So they're fucking nuts. They've been nuts for thousands of years. And that's exactly it.
So for that to be totally okay and this to be insane is, but and I just understanding historically, not even going back that far in recent history. I mean, this is my friend's grandparents that lived through this. You had, 35 years of Japanese occupation. And before the blood even cleared the soil, then you have 20% of the population of the northern half of Korea wiped out by bombs. I mean, there were more bombs in the DPRK than there were people at one point. And so then the U.S. sets up shop. I mean, controls the southern portion of Korea as a military base. South Korea does not control its own military. The president they have now is one of the most right-wing they've had in a long time. And so the very concept of it is makes such rational, logical sense that, of course, you'd want to be able to defend yourself. You have Japan right there, which historically has always been infringing upon. I mean, Korean colonialism, they're eating babies and selling women into sex slavery. And then you have the U.S. and their military bases occupying the southern region of your country. So quite obviously, you would want the capacity to defend yourself. And I don't know the exact number, but I do know they have only a fraction of the nuclear stockpile that the US does. In fact, the LAPD's funding is more money than the DPRK's entire funding.
Damn.
So yeah, I don't think it's that crazy. It's like locking your door. You know, it's like if someone comes in your house with a gun and kills your whole family, you're gonna get the gun that you have in your house and lock your door, which is essentially what they've done, right? They've closed themselves off from the rest of the world and armed themselves with nuclear arms. So that's perfectly logical to me. I mean, that's what I would do.
Yeah. It's gaslighting at its best. It's when it's making the victim seem like the aggressor. It's making the DPRK seem paranoid and seem like it's going to attack, even though the DPRK has never invaded or indebted a country ever, has never bombed the country, has never gone and forced people to adapt to speak Korean and adapt Juche as its ideology the way that the US has. So to me, it's crazy. But I think a lot of the ramping up of aggression is going to continue against the DPRK. And what really bothers me as well is that we have a lot of, what are your thoughts on people like, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, but Yeonmi Park, have you heard about her? And like these so-called defectors, like what are your thoughts? How do you respond? Because there's these idiots on the right who are like, well, look, she's from Korea and she's saying that it's horrible. Like, how do you respond to that, you know?
God, it's so funny. She tweeted White Lives Matter recently. Her thing is she's like, there was a rat and then the police ate my grandpa and my grandpa ate the rat who pushed the train. It's so ridiculous. There's so much inconsistency. And I have to say my comrade David made a really great documentary, Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang and Seoul, that really traces how the so-called defectors are manufactured. They're not genuine defectors with genuine stories. They're paid off to say the DPRK is a hellhole, or sometimes there's even something more insidious going on. I mean, they will put them in solitary confinement until they say what they want them to say. And Park Young-mi, I think, is just the perfect example of a fucking sellout. I just can't imagine how she sleeps at night with the blood of her people on her hands. I don't want to talk about her too long because everything I have to say is extremely violent and rude. But she just really is the quintessential perfect, like I'm talking like Fanon, black skin, white masks, like perfect example of a sellout. And so she's paid. I read recently that she gets paid $45,000 per speaking engagement. She tells lies about the DPRK. I'm not sure if this is true, so I would not say this in confidence, but I did see a tweet that said that the reason her family had to leave the DPRK was that her dad was like a pedophile, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. I do know it's true that she's lying, though, and I do know it's true that her plastic surgeon sucks. I mean, self-hatred you have to have, and it's a really common surgery in Korea, but she got, the double eyelid surgery, and she's getting her skin whitened and everything. It's just that self-hatred colonizer in her head. She has this hideous American white husband. He looks like Beans from Even Stevens. And I wonder sometimes if she believes what she says or not, or if she's doing it for the money, or if she does have a colonizer in her head that's, legitimizing her. I do wonder about that sometimes. And it's hard to tell. I guess I'll never know, but she is, to me, the quintessential sellout. And to understand doing that to your own oh yeah, see, he does look like Beans. Doing that to your own with every word she says that she's paid $45,000 or $45K to say, she is legitimizing the genocide of her own people. And that just to me is something that is beyond comprehension.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's just fascinating because it's kind of like when you see people like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, like people, these defectors, these right-wingers from socialist, anti-imperialist countries, and it's a disease that they have, honestly. They're just like, in their head, they're so colonized. They want to be like these wealthy white elites so badly, and they're never going to see them as an equal. Like if Park Yeon-mi goes to a GOP event, Republican event, a Trump event, or whatever, they're never gonna see her as
They're
a
gonna
freedom-loving
call her a
American.
fucking Duke. Are you kidding
Right.
me? Like literally, it's you're trying to sit at a table. You should be fucking like beheading everyone at. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
And it's just it's crazy because one thing I've noticed as well, me and Ophelia talked about this as well, is that people in the West in particular, they tend to think that they were surprised. Like me and Ophelia were at this Korean spot. We get Korean food all the time. Like I told you, LA has really amazing Korean food. And we were with a group of friends, and one of our friends who is not really knowledgeable about Korean culture or civilization in general was like, oh wow, like we saw somebody at the restaurant who's like brown, like they were like tan Korean, and they had like curly hair. Like it was kind of like my hair. And there's a lot of Koreans who are brown and have curly hair, but the depictions that we see in media is just these bleached, whitewashed Koreans who are aspiring to be Western and white, and it's just interesting. Yeah.
And that double eyelid surgery are two of the most lucrative, profitable, what's it called, industries in Korea. And I was talking to this woman recently, like romantically, who was Hmong. And it goes so deep that she told me as if I was supposed to be like flattered. Like I don't usually date Asian women. And I'm just like, that's
wow.
Sad. You're Asian. You realize that, right?
Damn.
But people have this colonizer in their head, and like that to me was just like, and I think that's common across most colonized cultures, like, because I know I've heard my Black and brown friends alike saying that they know people who won't date their own race, and that self-hatred runs so deep because of not only like there's a classical liberal analysis of representation, also the dialectical materialist anti-colonial analysis of proximity to whiteness as a way to escape. So like in terms of like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not one of these fucking MR Asians that's like, you're with the white man, you should be ashamed of blah blah blah. But when I do, I overwhelmingly see Asian women with white men. And it's just sort of like at a point that was the only way to escape the bombings was to go back to America with a GI. So as much as it disgusts me as a revolutionary communist, as a Korean woman, as a lesbian, as a person who understands history, that dynamic is so ingrained that it's like, can you even blame people?
Yeah. It's crazy. No, that's so true, and it's so fascinating. Even out here in California, I see it all the time. I've met Asian women in particular who work in Silicon Valley or in LA. Like they flat out say like, I don't date Asian guys, and they only exclusively date white guys.
And
yeah.
Sorry, the patriarchal issues in the East Asian community. So I don't blame them for not wanting to date Asian men in the context of not wanting to date men, in the context of the cis heteropatriarchy that was ingrained into East Asian culture by the colonizer. So I don't blame them on that, but it's just like, damn, like it is a self-hatred thing, I think, at the end of the day.
Most definitely. And that's why I really admire DPRK, because DPRK in many ways has preserved that dignity. When we talk about sovereignty and dignity, it's not just about economics and politics. It's also about culture, maintaining your traditions as a people. The Korean civilization is one of the oldest in history, and the DPRK has been the custodian of Korean civilization that has been passed down generation through generation. And they're synthesizing Korean civilization and tradition with socialism in a way that's not patriarchal or that's chauvinist or that's saying we're the best, we're number one. The DPRK preserves Korean culture in a proletarian nationalist way that identifies their nationalism as anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist, and that's why it's so beautiful to discuss that. What I do want to do is, I was recently watching this documentary from ABC Australia. It's just there's a billion of these, by the way, and we've talked about this before. there's a billion of these documentaries out there. It's like the creepy, scary North Korean. Here's the side of North Korea that nobody wants you to see. And what really pisses me off about a lot of these documentaries is that they act like they're going against the grain. Like they think they're so badass because they're like, we're showing you the side of North Korea. Nobody's showing you. They
act like it's like counterculture or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like they act like it's counterculture. They act like it's revolutionary. It's like you're repeating the imperialist mainstream narrative. Like, shut the fuck up, you know? Like, it's not anything crazy. So I'm gonna play a little bit of it. Yeah, they're like, oh my god, like nobody has seen this before. So this is one of the more recent ones. I'm gonna play some of this and we can react to it as I play some of it. So if there's anything you want to say that pops into your head, feel free and we'll just react to this. Music 3 seconds in.
Counting out thousands of euro in a taxi in Beijing, China is a strange way to start a story about North Korea. But before we can even travel to the reclusive state, we need to hand over a lot of money.
Oh my god, in cash.
Cash only, of course.
We have a very strict procedure about who can enter into.
By the way, I just want to give a heads up. So this guy on the right, I forget his name. He's some guy from Spain. I from what I've gathered about him, he seems pretty legit. Like he's like a longtime solidarity activist with the Korean Friendship Association. I would say my only critique, I don't want to be a dick, is that he speaks about DPRK and the we, as opposed to like saying, you know, the Korean people, because I think he lives in the DPRK, but he's one of these guys who's very he's a good dude. I've been in webinars with him and stuff like that, and he's a legit guy. He has good politics. That'd be like kind of like my only critique is that he says like we.
I have a problem with that personally. If he's so united with the political line that he feels welcomed by it, I don't have a problem with that. It's ridiculous that they act like it's insane that they can't use their cards. Your cards have USD American money on them. So yeah, you can't use your cards.
He's like, I can't use my money out there. Yeah. So but this guy, he says a lot of he pushes back like this. It was kind of interesting because this was one of the few mainstream media docs about DPRK where they have somebody who's actually has legit politics and he kind of pushes back. So let's see what he says.
Because we are very tired of propaganda media.
24 hours later at Beijing airport, we board an odd-looking Russian-built aircraft for the 90-minute flight to another planet.
To another planet.
North Korea's proper name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, or the DPRK.
Wow, beautiful.
It is.
Since the late 1940s, the country's been ruled by 3 generations of the Kim dynasty. Its latest dictator, the baby-faced 32-year-old Kim Jong-un.
I think he's really the perfect person to continue the revolution.
So, Spaniard Alejandro Cal.
By the way, I want one of those suits and pins. So fucking fresh. I love those
suits. So I heard that in China the new fashion is to dress up like workers, so like train conductors and stuff. They have a similar outfit, which is so interesting. We could get into like the influence behind Western fashion versus, like socialist side, but we can do that another time.
No, it's beautiful, yeah.
It is one of only a few foreigners the North Korean government trusts, and somehow he's become the official mouthpiece for the regime.
I would say first that he's very hardworking because whenever I had the chance to see him, his eyes are red and he's just thinking all the time.
Can I say something really quickly?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I think it's interesting. I think part of the reason that it's so easy for so-called Americans, European settlers in America, to demonize the Kims and demonize the DPRK's revolutionary leaders is because they have no concept of a leader that represents their own interests and serve the masses. So for them, it's so easy to just go straight to dictator when they see, people fawning. I mean, this is the family. His own politics aside, this man's great grandfather, Kim Il-sung, is the man who led the rebel forces, led this guerrilla warfare movement that pushed the Japanese imperialists out of the occupation of Korea after 35 years of the women being sold into sex slavery, the babies being eaten, and people being forced into labor camps. So, I mean, that alone is, and then to have carried on the tradition for Kim Il-sung to carry on the condition, and then Kim Jong-un to carry on that condition. And so when you see people feigning because they're meeting this, or fawning over them, or rushing to hug them, I think for Americans, it's so easy to jump to the conclusion that they're brainwashed, because what American leader has ever garnered that sort of trust from the masses? Can you imagine rushing up to hug George Bush?
Yeah.
And I mean, other than wacko Republicans, wacko Trump supporters, I think even that is such an interesting thing, because it's they don't even support them for what they've done for the people. They support them because they've taken and propagandized some displeasure that people have with the system, which goes back to capitalism. Even the poor white people who supported Trump did so because they thought that was their end to become the rich white people. So I think it's just a very telling that Americans specifically, Westerners specifically, find it so easy to jump to that conclusion, just because there is no revolutionary, there are revolutionary martyrs within America. So you have you have someone like Fred Hampton, but Fred Hampton was murdered by the state. So you could look up to Fred Hampton like that, but Fred Hampton, rest in power, as amazing as he was, as incredible of a revolutionary as he was, he is not in power now, the way the Kims and the Korean Workers' Party is in power now. So I just really wanted to quickly make that point.
That's such a great point. And I think people in the US have one term that I really hate when people use is cult of personality. It's such a fucking liberal piece of shit term that they're like, oh, aren't you afraid of a cult of personality? And it's for oppressed peoples around the world, why they have the right to look up to somebody like Kim Il-sung or Fidel or whoever, or Che Guevara, to aspire to admire them because they actually did amazing things for their people, were brave, were martyrs for their liberation struggles. And it just shows the arrogance too of the West, where they're like, oh, you're brainwashed, you're dumb. And it's you have these people who memorize every Drake lyric, who run in these concerts and trample people, just to touch some celebrity, and the celebrity worship in the US. And it's just insane. It's just people, we're so subverted in the US and so arrogant and brainwashed that we project that onto everybody else around the world. And it's just psychologically, it's just all sorts of fuck.
And extremely rare experience.
Oh, sorry. I'll just say this briefly. I think so much of anti-DPRK propaganda is Western projection.
Yep.
So, yeah.
100%. No, it's complete projection and making the DPRK accusing the DPRK of everything that the US actually does.
Inside North Korea. And we've already been warned numerous times that we'll be monitored and critiqued the whole time that we're here. Now, the tour itself, we know that will be highly staged managed, but for once at least, we do get to take a bit of a peek into the world's most secretive state. People move about freely, but they seem reserved. Certainly wary of us.
It's fucking creepy.
You're creepy, that's why, because you look...
They're like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
He's just
fucking, oh my god. I love those outfits, by the way.
So yes, well, North Korean army. We could say that the 24 million people in DPRK, they are all a full army. Everybody learns how to shoot a machine gun and to throw a grenade. That's to
everyone.
Everyone. In secondary school, you start.
Okay, but also, can we talk about how, first of all, based, but also he's acting like, oh my god, what? let's talk about how there's mandatory conscription for every South Korean male that's in South Korea, period. And what are they serving? The South Korean military. And who is that? The US. So
Exactly.
them knowing how to defend themselves, but not being forced to serve in the army is very different than occupied South Korea, where you're literally forced to serve in the army. So I think that's a little bit ridiculous that he's acting like that's cuckoo.
That's such a great point. And in addition to that, you also have the claim by a lot of anti-communists that they say, first they took our guns and then they took away our rights. And they're taking away the guns so that the people can't rise up. Why would a dictator or a tyrannical government arm the people and give them weapons and grenades? If everybody knows how to shoot, if everybody has weapons, why haven't they overthrown their government yet? Logistically, it doesn't make sense.
And I think that's such a Western paternalist view. Like, they must be too dumb. What, you think we're too dumb to revolt? If the government's not serving the masses, after throwing off the shackles of Japanese imperialism through guerrilla warfare, you think we couldn't handle it? Like, it's a very paternalistic of you to say that. To even think that they brainwashed millions of people, that they were capable of that, is again projection, I think, and in some ways because of the brainwashing propaganda power of the US.
Most definitely. No, it's so true.
Children will help to, for example, steal secrets from the enemy, and they did it already.
So every child at school learns how to shoot a machine gun or throw a grenade?
Yes.
It's very aggressive mindset for children, isn't it?
No, not at all. It's just a practical way to keep the people operative in case of an invasion.
Kim Jong-un might be the current leader, but his dead grandfather and father still wield enormous influence.
In the country, they are our parents, the parents of the nation and the parents of our ideology.
Western history judges Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il harshly, but here they're revered, and it's customary for locals and foreigners alike to lay flowers at their feet. It's an awkward dilemma for me. Insult our hosts or bow to their strange beliefs.
Oh my god. Fucking weirdo.
As it's early in my visit, I choose an uncomfortable diplomacy.
A US president famously described Kim Jong-il as evil. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's normal from such an ignorant person like George W. Bush to make this kind of insults and talk about a country that he doesn't know at all.
North Korea's enemy is the West. Hated most is the United States. And it's drilled into everyone that their duty is to defend the country.
Of the population.
Right. I'm sure they have a good reason to be upset.
At any cost.
How big is the nuclear arsenal?
Of course, it's a secret, but I can say that it's around 15, 20 nuclear missiles, but again, with capability to strike any part of the world, any, including Australia if necessary.
I like that guy.
Yeah, he's cool.
If anyone attacks this country, we'll answer with all our power, and if they try to destroy Korea, there will be no world standing.
A global Holocaust.
Yeah.
Literal, exactly. The same Samson rule option of Israel.
Right?
Exactly.
Korea is willing to kill 7 billion innocent people.
I hate his smug little smile.
Don't say Korea is going to defend its right to live. Don't forget, the culprit is the one who attacked innocent people, not us. Why you always trying to point at the DPRK as we are the ones threatening? No, this is DPRK. Respect it.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh my god, their train stations are so clean.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
This is a country ever ready for war. Even their subway is really a bomb shelter.
Girl,
having
what?
everyone believe the West is evil is the best way of keeping the outside world out.
I wish they'd kept you out.
Right? For real.
What adds to the feeling of being trapped here is the fact that as a foreigner, there's absolutely no way you can use your mobile phone and access
He's
to
like, I've been trying to get on Pornhub for the past 3 hours. Like, all right, bro, like, internet, well, you can't fucking trade stock and watch porn.
If you want information from the outside world, well, the local press here, or let's be honest, propaganda, is pretty pointless unless you want photos of Kim Jong-un pointing at things and headlines like, why all the fuss about human rights?
People living here cannot access the internet at all from the West to get any information. Why are they cut off?
Because we act as a family. DPRK is a family. It's not an individualistic society. We promote all common values, and we want to prevent things that are bad for society from entering.
For people to only get information from one source, the government, that just adds, though, to the theory that everyone here is brainwashed.
Every human being is always influenced by their families, by their society, by their friends. There are many points where you can get, information. So, brainwash, we could say that we are all, everybody, brainwashed somehow.
Yep. So there's more. It's pretty interesting. If you guys want to check the rest of it out, Inside Pyongyang, Rare State Guided Tour. I found it pretty interesting because
I'm shocked that they allowed, that they aired what that guy was saying, the other guy.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially because he's known, especially within the anti-imperialist circles and the KFA, as somebody who is a longtime solidarity activist. So for them to, so that's your cat. What's his name or her name?
Cat. I'm visiting some comrades in Chicago.
Wow, it looks just exactly like my cat. It's so creepy.
Mutant.
Such a cute cat. Yeah, I'm surprised they actually showed it, and it's interesting because I've noticed this with Australian media. They tend to, they're still obviously pro-imperialist and take the side of NATO and all that, but they tend to have perspective. Like something like that would have never aired on American television. So
that's interesting.
I just find that interesting.
It is interesting, especially considering that they have such a similarly violent colonial history. So I wonder what the divergence there is.
Yeah, I think it's also maybe because it's proximity to Asia, and one of Australia's biggest trading partners is China, and so maybe Australia kind of has to, they can't seem too war hawkish. But another thing that I wanted to share with you and all the comrades who are watching, now that we've kind of seen the Western gaze of the DPRK, I wanted to share some footage of a documentary. By the way, shout out to a comrade who runs the channel, Sangon007, who has some good content. I found this documentary in English that is from the DPRK, and it is translated, and it has some information about the history of the DPRK. So I'm going to let this play for a little bit, and then we'll talk about the significance and the importance of Kim Il-sung and the Workers' Party of Korea and Juche. I think it's a really inspiring video.
The history of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is the history of single-minded unity in which the Korean army and people have emerged victorious with indomitable mental power under the guidance of President Kim Il-sung and leader Kim Jong-il. Those historic days witnessed many mass parades demonstrating the superiority of socialism and its invincibility. Victorious is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in single-minded unity. Advancing under the wise guidance of leader Kim Jong-il, chairman of the National Defense Commission of the DPRK, the Korean people today are looking back with deep emotion upon the exploits of President Kim Il-sung, the founder of the DPRK. President Kim Il-sung opened a new phase of the building of people-centered socialist state in Korea. In September 1948, filled with the joy of having him acclaimed as the first head of the independent and sovereign state, Pyongyang citizens marched the streets in Pyongyang. They did not forget the sorrowful days when they had been deprived of the country by the Japanese imperialists and reduced to a ruined nation. Korean patriots shed much blood. The righteous volunteers army and the Independence Army fought with arms in their hands. But they were trampled underfoot by the aggressors miserably because they had not a genuine leader. In the dark days, President Kim Il-sung in his teens formed a revolutionary organization against the Japanese imperialists and united broad masses with an aim to build socialism with united strength of the whole nation and thus make all people well off. With the concept that revolution is unity and unity is revolution, the young communists held up President Kim Il-sung as the center of leadership and fought the Japanese imperialists with the strength of single-minded unity. The noble will of President Kim Il-sung to establish the people's power is embodied in the People's Revolutionary Government set up during the anti-Japanese armed struggle. Having returned home in triumph after the country's liberation, he called on the welcoming crowds to unite. The time has come for people to pool strength, to build a rich, independent and sovereign state. Let those with strength give strength, those with knowledge give knowledge, and those with money give money. Believing in the people who had been exploited and oppressed in the past, President Kim Il-sung pushed ahead with the general ideological mobilization movement for nation-building and democratic reforms. The president provided a strong military basis for founding a republic. The joy of having acclaimed Kim Il-sung, the liberator of the nation, as the first deputy of the people, is flowing in the parade procession to celebrate the founding of the DPRK. procession is overflowing with the honor of having held General Kim Il-sung in his 30s in high esteem as the leader of the nation. For the first time in the several thousand-year-long history of Korea, he established a new society in which the people were masters. The founding of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was a historic event, demonstrating the will of the Korean people to unite firmly around President Kim Il-sung. Amid the emulation-spirited drives for the increased production, the first motor line flowed, the first homemade ship sailed to the sea, and the song of General Kim Il-sung was created in reflection of the adoration for President Kim Il-sung. During the trying days of the war triggered off by the U.S. imperialists, President Kim Il-sung called the army and the people to turn out for victory, and the people rose up like a mountain. In the resolute days to defend the dignity of the Republic, the soldiers of the People's Army displayed unrivaled spirit of devotion with a firm belief in President Kim Il-sung. Living in the ruined country and liberated country, the soldiers had deeply felt the preciousness of the leader, and so they turned out in the final decisive battle, loudly shouting, "Long live General Kim Il-sung!" In the days of ordeals, President Kim Il-sung shared his joys and sorrows with the people to form a harmonious whole, and enforced benevolent policies for the people, thereby giving invincible strength and courage to the soldiers. Indeed, the destiny of the war in Korea depended on the indomitable mental power of the army and the people, who were united single-mindedly only around the leader. The historic victory in the Fatherland Liberation War was a brilliant fruition of the far-sighted wisdom, unparalleled pluck and courage, and the distinguished art of leadership of President Kim Il-sung. It was also a shining victory of the unity of the army and the people. The 3 years of war clearly proved that united around the leader, a country and nation can safeguard its destiny and win victory.
Very beautiful documentary. My heart is just so warm watching that. Again, shout out to Comrade Songun 007.
Absolutely, that was
great
incredible.
content. What'd you think about it?
Wow, that was beautiful. And I saw a picture, I believe, of Kim Jong-suk, and I think that people don't talk enough about her. So she was Kim Jong-il. She was actually not Kim Jong-il. Well, she was Kim Jong-il's father, but she used to, during the anti-Japanese struggle, she would cook and clean and mend clothes for the soldiers, and then she became a guerrilla soldier. So she was known as a sharpshoot. She led multiple units. She escaped a prison and like trekked like 2,000 miles or something crazy shoeless. She later was Kim Il Sung's bodyguard. She jumped in front of bullets for him, literally. There's like beautiful paintings of her doing so. And eventually became, they eventually married, and she remained his bodyguard. And obviously she was Kim Il Sung's or Kim Jong Il's mother. And so she actually also was the original creator and designer of the DPRK's military. And yeah, I just always like to mention her because I feel that she doesn't get mentioned enough. Except, I mean, she does in the DPRK. In the DPRK, she's regarded as one of their 3 revolutionary immortals. So there's lots of statues of her and stuff there. But I feel like in Western leftist discussion, she's very rarely mentioned. One of her units.
I have her behind me, actually. I don't know if you can see.
She was an amazing revolutionary propagandist, like a revolutionary educator. And one example is she won one of her units so tightly to the anti-colonial struggle line that one of the women wrote "Long Live the Korean Revolution" in her blood on a tree after she got shot by a Japanese soldier. Yeah, so she was incredible.
That's beautiful. Yeah, me and Ophelia actually have her picture. You see, to Mao, right next to Mao.
That's
I don't know
beautiful.
if you people.
Yeah, I have her picture above my altar.
She's cool, man. I totally agree with you that her story, and I think it also touches on something that's really important. It's like the role of women in the Korean Revolution. You see the status, the dignity, and uprightness that women have in the DPRK compared to South, quote unquote, South Korea. I don't know if maybe you want to talk a little bit about that too.
Before I talk about, South Korea, I want to quickly mention this is a parallel that you saw in the Panthers. So Elaine Brown, I saw an interview where she said, where someone was like, how do you address the allegations of sexism in the Black Panther Party, which is an entirely different conversation that I feel is not entirely my place to have. But what Elaine Brown said in response to that specifically was, in the Panthers, and Elaine Brown was the chairman of the Panthers and Huey P. Newton's absent. So she said, it wasn't about gender. You went where they needed you to go, regardless of your gender. And I think that you see the same thing in this anti-Japanese occupation struggle. She went where she needed to go. The other thing is, so I think in the West and in South Korea, because understanding that as an extension of the West, because it is essentially a U.S. satellite military base, there's this roles that, how do I say this? Roles that are historically belittled are also historically feminized. So things like homemaking, mending clothes, cooking, historically feminized. We could look at Engels', analysis of the family as a tool of capitalism. But so historically feminized, therefore, because they're historically undervalued. Whereas in the DPRK, and there are passages about this in DPRK literature, there is nothing more revolutionary to them than sewing a shirt, because they know that their comrade that lives beside them is going to wear the shirt. And there's this beautiful passage in, I forget what book, where Kim Il Sung and Kim Jong Suk are traveling around and explaining to people that the Japanese occupation has been defeated. And they're like, so now because people didn't understand, they're like, now when you make stuff, you are making it for you and not Japanese imperialism. And but because those in Western society, those are such historically undervalued roles, because and we can tie that to capitalism, they're thus like historically tied with the role of the quote unquote female woman, what have you, in Western society, colonial society. Whereas the DPRK has simply, and it even goes back to the speech that Kim Il Sung, that they translated in that video. It's like, those who have strength give strength, those who have knowledge give knowledge, those who have money give money, regardless of gender. And also, in terms of women in the military, I think the DPRK probably has every other nation beat.
Yeah, most definitely. No, it's it's such an amazing point, and I think that it's something that we have to really think about and ponder within the left today in terms of the different roles that people play, what it means to be revolutionary, self-reliance. I think that's one of the beautiful things as well about Juche and the Korean Revolution is a firm understanding that whenever you're reliant on someone or something, that's always how they get you. I mean, it's like
And
how
that
Thomas
very much
Sankara says, you know?
reminds me of Sankara. That's exactly what I was about to say. You know, when he said, you know, if they wanted to help us, they would not send food; they would send farming equipment. And I think, and Sankara and Kim Il Sung were actually very close comrades. Sankara actually gave Kim Il Sung a mother of pearl pistol, and Kim Il Sung was actually buried with that pistol. They were very close comrades. And they had such a similar political line: self-determination, self-reliance. Juche, you know, humankind, mankind, the masses of the people, as the determinant of the own factors of their life, is such a profoundly beautiful political line.
Oh, 100%. Every time I was reading Kim Il Sung's works, I wanted to like do shit. Like I get inspired, even just watching like DPRK films, and not only do I feel like so like this inner peace within me, like just calm and optimistic, but I also feel like, wow, like I want to learn how to paint. I want to learn how to do this and that, you know?
I know I'm dressed insane for a podcast. Sorry, I'm going.
No, it's all good. You're chilling.
But this tattoo that my friend Kelsey, who's Korean, did is actually a painting from the opera Sea of Blood that Kim Il Sung wrote. And in the opera, the woman, she joins the and I love that it was a woman. She joins the anti-Japanese struggle after her whole family is killed by Japanese occupation soldiers.
That's so cool.
And so she has the pistol, she has the chain breaking. The tiger was my thing. I added it because it's a symbol of Korea. This was from one of his operas, Sea of Blood. And he wrote like a lot of operas, actually.
Beautiful. That's so cool. His writing is so good. And I actually wanted to share one document that is so relevant today, even especially when we're talking about politics and imperialism. This document is from 1968. So this is a long time ago. This is called Great Anti-Imperialist Revolution, Cause of Asian, African, and Latin American Peoples is Invincible. And this is written on the occasion of the first anniversary of Ernesto Che Guevara's death, who we heard from the beginning. I just want to read some of it and just wrap up our discussion about the international fight against imperialism, because so much of what Kim Il Sung says here, again, this is 1968, is relevant today. So this is Kim Il Sung. U.S. imperialism is the most barbarous and most heinous imperialism of modern times, and it is the chieftain of world imperialism. It is not the Asian and Latin American countries or the African countries alone that have their sovereignty and territories infringed upon by U.S. imperialism or are under the menace of U.S. imperialist aggression. There is no place on the earth to which U.S. imperialism has not stretched out its tentacles of aggression, and where U.S. imperialism sets foot, the people always shed blood. The U.S. imperialists pursue the invariable aim to put the whole world under their control. It is to realize this aim that the U.S. imperialists incessantly perpetuate armed invasion and subversive activities against the socialist and newly independent countries and brutally suppress the liberation struggle of peoples of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This wild, aggressive design of U.S. imperialism must be frustrated decisively. It is clear that world peace cannot be safeguarded, nor can national liberation and independence or the victory of democracy and socialism be achieved apart from the struggle against U.S. imperialism. To fight U.S. imperialism, it is the inescapable common duty and the first and foremost revolutionary task for all the peoples of the world. For the successful defeat of U.S. imperialism, it is necessary to penetrate into its world strategy thoroughly. The basic strategy of U.S. imperialism for world aggression at the present stage, again, this is 1968, is to destroy by force of arms the small and divided revolutionary socialist countries and the newly independent countries one by one, while refraining from worsening its relations with big powers and shunning confrontation with them as far as possible, and to intensify ideological and political offensive against and subvert from within those countries which are weak ideologically and not willing to make revolution, but spread illusion about imperialism among the people, clamoring only for unprincipled coexistence with imperialism and desire to live on good terms with imperialism. On the basis of this world strategy, the US imperialists are increasing their armaments extensively and further reinforcing their military bases and aggressive military alliances to attack the socialist and progressive countries. The US imperialists have openly embarked on, quote, local war and, quote, special war in Vietnam and some other places while preparing total war and nuclear war on a large scale. This is the part where it gets really interesting, and I think it's relevant to what's going on today, especially when we talk about Ukraine and Iran. And simultaneously with this, the U.S. imperialists resort to a new form of Cold War to encourage, quote, liberalization and, quote, democratic development in certain countries, while running wild to bribe and make a cat's paw of the cowards within the ranks of the working class movement who are afraid of revolution. They clamor for the, quote, most favored nation treatment and the expansion of the, quote, east-west contact and interchange. And with this as a means, seek to infiltrate their reactionary ideology and culture to degrade the peoples ideologically, hamper economic development, and thus undermine those countries from within. The imperialists are carrying out sabotage and subversive intrigues to tear the newly independent states away from the anti-imperialist front one by one. While resorting to force overtly, they penetrate into the newly independent countries with, quote, aid as a bait and meddle in their internal affairs. The U.S. imperialists whip together the right-wing reactionaries and pit them against the progressive forces and seek to sway newly independent countries to the road of counter-revolution. And here, just wrapping up, namely wielding an olive branch in one hand and arrows in the other, the U.S. imperialists maneuver to swallow up the revolutionary countries one by one through armed aggression and subvert the ideologically weak countries through ideological and cultural aggression, combining nuclear blackmail with, quote, peaceful penetration and repression, with appeasement and deception. The peoples of the whole world should maintain sharpest vigilance against such intrigues and maneuvers by U.S. imperialism, and should be fully prepared to counter the enemy's possible aggression of all forms. And then he just goes on to finish here. He says, in order to develop the anti-imperialist, anti-U.S. struggle vigorously, it is important to cement to the maximum the militant unity of all areas, all countries, all parties, all people, and all forces opposing imperialism. So very beautiful words by Kim Il-sung.
I'm so glad.
What do you think about that?
I hadn't read this in like 4, 5, or 6 years. So I'm really glad that you brought it up. First of all, I just think the sentiment of the Asian, African, Latin American unity is beautiful. And you see that. So, I mean, I was rereading Soledad Brother, George Jackson, the other day, and he said something so similar to this. There's a quote I love by, I hate to butcher the name, but the Palestinian revolutionary Ghassan, it's like Khanaf.
Yeah.
But he said, and I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but he said something like, U.S. imperialism has laid its whole body over the world, its head in Asia, its stomach in Africa, and its fists in Latin America. Wherever you strike it, you slice at it and serve the world revolution, something like that. I messed it up. But so just that sentiment of that unity is so powerful. And, you know, the DPRK really backed that up. They trained soldiers and for the Zimbabwe Liberation Front. They sent a lot of building materials all over Africa. Obviously, their legendary solidarity with Cuba, legendary solidarity with China. They also, I mean, so they really put their money where their mouth was in terms of that. And so I think that in itself is beautiful. And I think, yeah, that last session was really interesting. It's almost like, you know how Mao says, I think it might be an opposed book worship. You have the intermediate element that you want to radicalize. You have the backward element. And then you have the progressive element of like within the masses of people. It's almost like, you know, he's saying in this that you also have that in nations and in world powers. And it is so interesting because you look at a place historically like India or Egypt that has anti-colonial history, but then becomes, and I've come to understand, and now correct me if I'm wrong, because this is something I've recently come to understand, how, you know, Indians love Israel. And I think that a lot of that is a misconception of equating Islam with the Palestinian struggle, which is something a lot of people unfortunately do. And then it becomes a weird like Hindu, but I don't know. But just looking at nations historically, the southern part of Korea very much included in that conversation, that have anti-imperialist history and then get pulled into this reactionary element. And especially like looking at the neo-Nazi movements, and I mean, it's not even neo-Nazis in Ukraine. These are OGs, you know? So I think that this is eerily timely.
Most definitely. And I think you're alluding to something that's really important because, and even Kim Il-sung talks about this in his writing, where in a particular region of the global South and Asia, Africa, and Latin America, the U.S. does divide and conquer strategy where they pick like the teacher's pet or the class pet. It's kind of like that really abusive teacher that just yells at everybody, like those like really like racist white teachers in the hood. And then they pick like that one like teacher's pet to be like, oh, you see, I'm a good teacher. Like I don't hate all you guys. I just like this one student. And a lot of times that teacher's pet of the region in Latin America, for example, you can see, well, I guess up to recently, Colombia and Honduras and Chile have been like the examples of, you know, capitalism and free market.
And there was Guaido
for a little while. Guaido, exactly, yeah, for a little bit. And then in Asia, like, you know, a lot of the white imperialists, they love talking about the four tigers and Singapore, and like they're like, oh, look at Singapore and look at you know, South Korea,
there's Tibet,
Hong Kong,
there's Japan.
Yeah, and it's like, and then you have like the kids in the back of the class, like DPRK, Vietnam, who are like, man, fuck this teacher.
Boo.
Like,
yeah, like
exactly.
Spitballs.
Yeah. So it's like, it's interesting, like that sort of dynamic. Same thing in Africa, you know, Zimbabwe has always been, you know, attacked by the Western media, Western press, Libya under Gaddafi. And then you have countries like Nigeria or Ethiopia that by the Western imperialist powers kind of praise. And so it's like I call it like pit and pedestal, where it's like,
and
like
you know,
they go into a region, they put somebody on the pedestal, and then everybody else they put in the pit, you know?
And it's just ridiculous because self-preservation, self-interest alone. But I mean, there's also the class question, right? Because it's not the masses of these countries that are making these decisions. And everywhere there's money involved. So there's a class element to that too. But the colonial, the pick and choose, the divide and conquer is oldest trick in the colonial imperialist playbook for sure.
Most definitely. Just wrapping up here, somebody earlier had a really great question. I think they said, I'm going to see if I can find it, but they basically said something along the lines of, what resources, books, documentaries do you suggest people check out when it comes to the DPRK? I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to recommend.
So I would start with my comrade David made an incredible documentary available for free on YouTube, Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang and Seoul. That's about debunking the defectors. Primary sources, like works of Kim Il-sung. There's one, Reconstruction in Socialist Korea, that's very good. There's a book called The U.S. Imperialists Started the Korean War, which is, I have a Google Drive of a lot of Korean resources, resources for Korean reading. So on my Instagram, it's DEEZPRK. If you DM me, I can give you the link to that library. In terms of other things, there's a 3-part political biography of Kim Il-sung that is by, I believe, Bong, B-O-N-G. I want to say. What else? Those are the primary resources. There's also a biography of Kim Jong-suk that I highly recommend, and I think that there's a copy of that on the digital library. In addition to that, I would say there are quite a few. There's one other documentary that the name of which completely escapes me, but I think those are a good place to start. And when I've gathered my thoughts more, I can respond like on Instagram if you want to shoot me a DM or whatever. Yeah.
For sure. No, thank you so much. Really appreciate having you on. It's been awesome talking to you. I always love having conversations with you about all of this because I think you have a very unique perspective that not a lot of comrades who I've met who are Korean necessarily have. I think more Korean comrades I've met are sympathetic to the DPRK, but maybe feel ashamed or peer pressured into admitting it. You know, I've also gotten that vibe too, where like they feel alone. So for you to come out and to say like, I'm Korean, I defend my people and the revolution, whether it's perfect or not, I think that's a very powerful statement, you know? So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to mention?
I just want to extend my gratitude to you, comrade, for always holding it down, for always supporting the DPRK, for the incredible work you do and, you know, revolutionary propaganda and education. And congratulations again to you and Ophelia. I can't wait to get over there for the wedding.
Yes.
It's all through. I mean, I feel like we could go for 3 or 4 more hours if we wanted to.
100%.
When we get together.
And imagine, like, right now we're just talking about DPRK. Like, there's so many other things that, you know, maybe at some point I'd like to talk to you about off air or whatever, just about like politics, the state of the U.S. left, what the fuck is going on, and yeah. So you know, I'd like to pick your brain, you know, off air about different things. I'm excited to have you come and visit LA. We should, when you're here, we should try to. With Ophelia, I try to get some Korean food. We go to this one spot called, I'm gonna butcher the name, Jeonju or something like that.
Oh, I know
it's so bomb. Yeah, no, it's good. It's on point. It's really, really good, and they're so nice to us. It's one of our favorite spots. I always get the bibimbap. So we'll try to take you there. But yeah, comrade, it's been really dope speaking to you. For everybody who wants to, is it okay if I tell people to follow your IG?
Sure, yeah. It's on private,
okay,
but
cool.
I'll
let me hold on. Let me pull it up because I put it in the chat. Your handle, dude. I haven't even been on social media, so I forgot about handles. I'm only on YouTube, and you know, that's something maybe another time we can talk about. But like getting off of social media for me has been very nice, very calm. I feel so
leaving Twitter.
So relaxed.
Is amazing. Now I only I'll take long breaks from Instagram.
Yeah. For sure. So this is the comrade says handle at DEEZPRK.
It's like these nuts DPRK. Like.
PRK. I like it. These PRK. Thank you so much, comrade. So I really appreciate you. We'll talk soon. And shout out to everybody for watching and listening. Again, shout out to comrade Song Gun 007, who has amazing documentaries on their channel. Make sure to go and check out his channel. And also shout out to Comrade B Level. He has some really great content as well. We're gonna go out to some more music from the DPRK. Peace out, everybody. Have a great weekend. Love y'all. Take care and have a good night. Bye.
밝히고 증명만 하면 그만이여라.